Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Ghostly Tales from Liao Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called Bureau of Examinations. In Hunan, there was a man named Wen Rensheng. One time, he fell seriously ill and lay in bed, dazed, until the evening. Suddenly, Wen Rensheng saw a scholar walk in. The scholar knelt beside his bed with the most respectful and formal greeting, appearing extremely humble and deferential. Afterward, the scholar invited Wen Rensheng to take a walk. He took Wen Rensheng's arm and chatted with him, speaking incessantly as they strolled. The two walked for several miles, yet the scholar showed no sign of saying goodbye. Wen Rensheng was the first to stop, cupped his hands in salute, and bid farewell to the scholar. The scholar said, "Please walk a bit further with me. I have a favor to ask of you." Wen Rensheng asked what it was, and the scholar replied, "All of us are under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Examinations, which is overseen by a ghost king named Shudu. Whenever someone meets him for the first time, it's customary to cut a piece of flesh from their thigh to present to him as a gift. I was hoping you could help us avoid this tradition." Wen Rensheng, shocked, asked, "What crime have you committed that requires such a punishment?" The scholar replied, "It's not necessarily because of a crime, this is just an old rule. Unless someone gives the ghost king a substantial bribe, they can't avoid the flesh-cutting ritual. But I'm too poor to afford such an extravagant gift." Wen Rensheng said, "But I don't know the ghost king of the underworld, how could I possibly help you?" The scholar responded, "In your past life, you were an ancestor of the ghost king, so he should listen to you." As they spoke, they arrived at a city. They entered an official building, and on either side were narrow rooms, but the central hall was tall and spacious. In front of the hall, on either side, stood two stone tablets with large green characters carved into them, larger than a basket. One tablet read, "Filial piety, brotherly love, loyalty, trustworthiness," while the other read, "Propriety, righteousness, integrity, sense of shame." Wen Rensheng took a large step onto the platform and into the hall, where he saw a plaque in the middle that read, "Bureau of Examinations." On the pillars in front of the hall was a wooden couplet, with the upper part reading, "Schools of various kinds cultivate virtue through subtle education," and the lower part reading, "Students of all ranks learn propriety in music together, nurturing future talents." Wen Rensheng hadn't finished exploring when an official-looking figure emerged. He had curly hair, a hunched back, and appeared to be several hundred years old. His nostrils faced upward, and his short lips revealed a sparse set of sharp teeth. Behind him followed a scribe in charge of managing records and documents, who had the body of a man and the head of a tiger. About a dozen others also appeared, standing in formation, most of them with fearsome, monstrous faces like beasts of the mountains. The scholar whispered to Wen Rensheng, "That's the ghost king." Wen Rensheng was terrified and kept retreating. The Ghost King had already noticed Wen Rensheng and immediately descended the steps to bow and invite him to sit, warmly inquiring about his health. Wen Rensheng dared not make eye contact and responded vaguely in fear. The Ghost King asked, "What brings you here?" Wen Rensheng then explained how the scholar had invited him. Hearing this, the Ghost King's face darkened, and he said, "This flesh-cutting rule is ancient tradition. Even if my father ordered me to change it, I wouldn't agree." Seeing the Ghost King's stern demeanor, Wen Rensheng realized further discussion was futile. He hurriedly stood and took his leave. The Ghost King also rose and escorted him all the way to the door before turning back. However, Wen Rensheng was still worried about the scholar and did not return home immediately. Instead, he secretly sneaked back to see what would happen next. Quietly, he hid in the main hall and saw the scholar and a few others standing there, their arms tied behind their backs. Their fingers were clamped between wooden sticks and were already red and swollen. A fierce-looking man with a knife approached them. He pulled down the pants of the scholar and the others, exposing their thighs, and began cutting flesh from them. A piece of flesh, about 3 fingers wide, was cut from the scholar's thigh, and he screamed in agony, his voice nearly hoarse from the pain. Seeing this scene, Wen Rensheng, though terrified, was so enraged that he could no longer contain himself and shouted, "Such cruelty and wickedness! What kind of world is this?" The Ghost King, startled, immediately stood up in alarm and ordered his subordinates to stop cutting the flesh. He then quickly stepped forward to greet Wen Rensheng once more. But Wen Rensheng would not relent. He stormed out, telling passers-by in the street about the horrific scene he had just witnessed, and declared his intention to write a petition to the Jade Emperor in the Celestial Palace. The people on the street laughed at Wen Rensheng and said, "You're really foolish. This is the realm of ghosts. Where are you going to find the Jade Emperor in the heavens? You'd be better off seeking out the King of Hell. He's the one who governs the ghost world. He might actually do something about it." With that, they pointed Wen Rensheng in the direction of the King of Hell's palace. Following their guidance, Wen Rensheng hurried off and soon saw a magnificent palace. The King of Hell was seated at the front of the hall. Wen Rensheng knelt on the steps outside the door and cried out for justice. The King of Hell summoned him into the hall for questioning, and after hearing his complaint, he immediately sent several ghost soldiers armed with ropes and hammers out of the hall. Before long, the Ghost King and the scholar were both brought before the court. After a detailed investigation, it was confirmed that Wen Rensheng's account was accurate. Upon learning the truth, the King of Hell became furious and said to the Ghost King, "I admired you during your life because, despite your poverty, you studied hard. That's why I appointed you as a Ghost King after your death. I had hoped you would do good deeds in the ghost world, and that one day you could be reincarnated into a wealthy family. But I never imagined that after becoming an official, you would commit such evil acts. Now I will strip you of your fortune, increase your misfortune, and punish you so that in every lifetime, you will fail to achieve your desires." After these words, a ghost soldier struck the Ghost King with a club, knocking him to the ground and causing one of his teeth to fall out. The ghost soldier then cut open the tips of the Ghost King's fingers and pulled out a white, thread-like substance. The Ghost King screamed in pain, his howling like that of a pig being slaughtered. After the luck on his hands and feet was all stripped away, the ghost soldier dragged him away. Wen Rensheng did not say anything further. After kowtowing to the king of hell, he left. As he departed, the scholar followed behind, expressing his deep gratitude and heartfelt thanks. The scholar held on to Wen Rensheng's arm, accompanying him through the streets. Suddenly, Wen Rensheng noticed a household with curtains drawn, and behind the curtains, he saw half of a woman's face. Her beauty and attire were striking. Wen Rensheng asked the scholar, "Whose house is this?" The scholar replied, "This is a brothel." They continued walking, but Wen Rensheng couldn't shake the thought of the woman. He felt an inexplicable attachment to her and insisted that the scholar no longer escort him. The scholar said, "I came to the human world to find you, and now I can't bear to let you go back alone." Wen Rensheng, however, firmly refused his company, so the scholar had no choice but to leave. After watching the scholar walk away, Wen Rensheng quickly rushed back to the brothel. The woman warmly welcomed him, her face lit with joy. They entered the house and sat together closely, exchanging names. The woman introduced herself. "My surname is Liu, and my given name is Qiuhua." An old woman came in to prepare food and wine for them. After drinking, they retired to the bedchamber and enjoyed a night of intimacy. Wen Rensheng earnestly made a marriage pact with Qiuhua. The next morning, the old woman entered again, saying, "We have no money for firewood or rice. Sir, you will need to pay up." It was only then that Wen Rensheng realized he had left home without any money. He felt anxious and ashamed, unable to respond. After a long while, Wen Rensheng blushingly said, "I have no money on me right now, but I can write you an IOU. I promise to pay you back when I return home." The old woman's face darkened upon hearing this. She replied, "Have you ever heard of a courtesan asking a client for an IOU?" Qiuhua frowned in silence. Wen Rensheng had no choice but to leave his clothes as collateral. The old woman, holding his clothes, laughed and said, "This still doesn't cover the wine from last night." She grumbled as she left with Qiuhua, clearly displeased. Wen Rensheng felt deeply embarrassed. After a while, he still hoped Qiuhua would come out to bid him farewell and reaffirm their earlier marriage pact. But after waiting for a long time, no one came. He sneaked inside and was shocked to see that the heads of both the old woman and Qiuhua had transformed into ox heads, their eyes large and glowing, standing face to face. Terrified, Wen Rensheng fled immediately. He wanted to return home, but there were too many crossroads, and he didn't know which way to go. He asked the people on the street, but since this was the ghost realm, no one knew the way back to his hometown. Helpless, Wen Rensheng wandered the streets for 2 days and nights, overcome with sorrow and hunger, with no way forward or back. Suddenly, the scholar passed by again and, seeing Wen Rensheng, said in surprise, "Why haven't you gone home yet, and why are you dressed so poorly?" Embarrassed, Wen Rensheng told him everything. The scholar said, "I see. You must have been enchanted by that flower demon." With that, the scholar angrily headed toward the brothel. When he arrived, he shouted, "Qiuhua and her mother took someone's clothes. How can they be so disrespectful?" Wen Renxing didn't dare go in, but after a while, the scholar returned with Wen Renxing's clothes in hand and said, "That girl was too rude, so I scolded her for you." The scholar then escorted Wen Renxing all the way home before finally saying goodbye. At that moment, Wen Renxing suddenly woke up. It was only then that his family told him he had already been dead for 3 days due to illness. Despite this, Wen Renxing clearly remembered his entire experience in the underworld even afterward. Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tale, Bureau of Examinations. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.